Hello and welcome to, I think it's now the third, fourth episode of the Trading Card Lobby. And the third one. Thank you, Dan. My name is Patrick. I'm one of the hosts of the show. And yeah, today we're talking about is trading card, just are trading card games getting worse over the years? Is today's trading card games not like the past? Wasn't the past everything better? But before I starting to talk too much what videos from the last shows known that I'm talking sometimes too much, I will give it up directly to Dan. Hey Dan, welcome to the third episode of the Trading Card Lobby.
Hi, glad to be back. Glad to have everyone here. We have some returning people, some new guests. So, for those who are tuning in for the first time, I'm Dan. I work at TCG-Home, but I'm also a experienced traveling magic judge. And yeah, I've been a magic judge for 9 years now, I think. So yeah, that's where I got some experience from the past and now, and I started Magic in 2002. So yeah, I've seen the game evolve for a while. Let's pass it around and ask everyone to give a little short introduction, starting with Dorian BaconZack over here.
Yeah, hi everybody. Hello, internet. Nice for having me. Great honor to be here. I think I'm the most casual player in this round by a mile. But that might be especially interesting, hearing from you guys what you have to tell me about the real professional tournament stuff. Because I'm actually only playing with my friends. We still play competitively, but more on that later on, I would say. I don't know who wants to.
And I think also to add to that, that you're just a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I think that is important because the first episode was very focused on Magic the Gathering. So we have so Dorian, you started with the game coming out as an anime in Germany, so 2003. So that's why you legit for this episode to say, hey, I played in the older days. Some of our viewers are born after 2003, so I think that's legit for be a part of this episode.
Yeah. No, just want to say I played on the streets, man. I dueled on the streets.
Yeah.
They made me who I am.
So, and then I want to give it over to our next new guest. It's Philip, aka Flippy, from AlphaCastle.
Hi, I'm Philip, or Flippy. I started Magic a long time ago, around 20 years ago, playing, and eventually became a judge around 15 years ago. But I never judged as much as for example, Dan. And in recently, for around 10 years now, I run events for JK Entertainment, a German store, if you haven't heard of it, like bigger events, Command Fest, Eternal Weekend, and smaller events, whatever happens in the local game store in Darmstadt.
I think I can give it over directly to our last, last but not least, our artist in this round, and also, what can I say? Vintage old school player or just legacy player, Kai?
I mean, I play many formats, but yeah, I'm Kai, aka Salvatorix. I'm the guy who pops up occasionally on YouTube videos and shorts from TCG-Home, and I'm also a Twitch streamer, and I make art and go to events, have a booth, connect with players, play a lot of Magic, and yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah, and forgetting to introduce myself, so I'm also one of the guys from TCG-Home. I'm the co-founder of TCG-Home, also enjoying trading cards for, often 2000, starting with Magic and Pokemon, and also Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2003, because it's doing everyone at a time. Yeah, I know not everyone in this round, but there's a lot of people who do that. Today we have something very special for this episode because we get a sponsorship for this one. We have a Karlov Mana English sealed booster display, booster box, with play boosters because regular draft boosters are dead. And we will give out this to our live audience today. So staying in this stream qualifies you. And we also, I think Dan is looking into the chat as well, or just Kai as well, to check out if you have questions or you have something to add to the show or a comment, feel free. And at the end of the show, we will choose one winner. And I think we can start with the topic today. But then
one more thing for the giveaway. Hello, chat. Love to have you here. And there's one very simple thing that you need to do to enter in the giveaway. And that is, now that I've started the giveaway, just type TCG Murders in the chat and you will be entered automatically. And yeah, stay around until the end when we draw a winner. And if you're drawn, just let's get the details from you, and that way we know who to send the box to. So stick around till the end.
Is that a more recent set or is it an older set? Because I don't know anything or nearly nothing about Magic and the current cards, as Patrick said before. So can you fill me in with that?
It's the second most recent set.
Okay, so it's pretty new. Yeah.
Imagine Photon Hypernova for Yu-Gi-Oh!
Okay. I get it.
And it's the Cluedo set. So it's from the board game Cluedo. We have one murderer, and you have to figure out who was the murderer. And at the moment, we are in Back to the Future 3, where we are in a Western scenario in Magic the Gathering, the cyberpunk futuristic in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Yeah, but that's like something also that brings me perfectly to the topic, because in nowadays, I think, so I would start with this one, and I want to hear your arguments to all out there from you guys. Do you think that there are too many products in a too short time that came out? Because if I remember in the past, depends not only on Magic, also on Yu-Gi-Oh! Also on Pokemon. So Pokemon is something that run smoothly like in the past, but I think in the past in Magic you have 4 sets over the year and 1 core set. Sometimes a special unique thing, but it was very, very rare. And in Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember that we had, I think, also every 3 months a new set and a few starter decks. But I would start with you, Philip. What do you think? Wasn't in the past better to have a shorter amount of sets, or do you think it is cool that we have every 1 or 2 months a new set or a new product?
It was different. 20 years ago, we didn't need that many sets. But now, if you play Magic, and let's say you play Commander, like most Magic players, and there's half a year without a Commander release, you don't spend money. So
Yeah.
let's say every 2 months, a new Commander deck. That's nice for Commander players. That's not so nice for competitive players who want to keep up in Legacy or Modern, because they have to spend much more. But for Commander, I think it's perfectly fine. Just for Commander players.
So to give an understanding to Dorian, so we have in Magic there are several formats, like what you have in Yu-Gi-Oh! With traditional and regular format. Then we have gold format.
Yeah, I already know that, actually. That's the thing I know, that you have that different kind of formats, and that it depends, or that some cards are banned in one format and in the other, so you can't play every card in every format, right?
Yeah.
So
we have one format that is we have one format that is similar to Yu-Gi-Oh! Where cards are limited, because in Magic it is normally forbidden or allowed 4 times. But in Vintage, there's a possibility that you have cards limited to 1, like the Power 9. By the way, Power 9, Kai, what do you think? Because you played Vintage a couple of years, and do you think that that amount of new sets also makes vintage or I would say modern Magic vintage play more difficult, more problematic, too many combos, unstable, or do you think it's the right amount of sets that we get at the moment?
So like for vintage, like vintage is, dude, vintage is like an old format, right? Like you can basically do whatever the hell you want. But the power level is really really high. Like decks tend to win on turn 1 and turn 2 sometimes. Obviously games can also go a little longer than that, but like the power level is so high that I would probably say that it doesn't really matter how many sets come out, because only the best of the best cards make it into vintage decks, right? Of course you can play, I don't know, like new commander-ish cards in vintage and add your ancestral recall, time walk, and some marks in it. It might be a functional deck, but can it keep up with other vintage pillars? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think vintage is perfectly fine. Other formats such as like modern maybe, or like legacy might have more of a problem because the power level is not as high, and these like mid to high power cards, but especially like the mid power cards, might just like naturally sneak into those formats, right? Like naturally. And also there are not that many good answers. Like vintage has all the good answers. They're like Force of Will, the Fourth Negation, Mental Misstep, like Force of Vigor, of course, and like lots and lots of cards to, or you basically play like, I don't even know, like Mishra's Workshop into Trinisphere, and it all doesn't matter. Like there's a lot of things you can do in vintage, I think, that keep the format healthy. And in fact, like I streamed vintage yesterday and I had a blast. I just goofed around with chat, like we built like a fun deck together. We built a legacy deck, which then we ported into vintage. It was a terrible deck, but we had a lot of fun still. And that's exactly what I see when I see these like new sets. Some of them make it into vintage, but not all of them.
Maybe a question from my side, because I know it a little bit, but again, I'm not too familiar with this. But from what I understood from other people from my own community and so on, is like, at least it sounded like that to me, that in Magic, every now and then new format gets updated, and then you basically have to, or you can't use a big majority of your cards no longer, and you basically have to buy new cards in order to not only have the best cards, but to eligibly play the game. And I don't know if I really have the right impression here or not, but if I'm right with that, I don't know how I would feel like as a player when I've been collecting cards for so many years, and then the company just decides, oh well, sorry, but you can't use it anymore.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's you're totally right. You're totally right. That's exactly what's been happening, more or less. I think, especially since like since like 2020 maybe ish, or maybe 19 or so, or powerful cards get printed, right? And like some of the legacy decks, honestly, they look like standard decks with Force of Will and dual lands. So
Also, one thing that
Brainstorm.
I want to add here is that as you know, Dorian, Magic has all these different formats, and the way cards get introduced to them is different depending on each format. So, for example, Standard usually has 4 sets a year where all the cards from those sets go into the Standard format, and then I think every 2 years right now, the couple oldest sets rotate out, and only the newest ones stay legal. So basically, that's the idea behind it, is to have that as an entry-level format, so only the newest cards get played. So you don't have to like buy cards from 30 years ago, because Magic has such a long history, and it's easier to get into. Now the downside is, if you played for a long time, it keeps rotating. So you have to keep buying all the new sets all of the time, and that's how it used to be for the longest time. But now, we don't only get 4 sets a year, we get sets every 5 weeks. but still only 4 of those go into standard. And the others go into some of the other formats. So there have been periods, especially in recent years, where some of the bigger formats, like Modern, for example, effectively rotate quicker than Standard does. Because so many new releases have a big impact on Modern, that what's getting played and what's strong and what really performs at a tournament changes more often than the card pool in Standard rotates.
Okay.
And I think also a big issue, or sometimes some would say, hey, that's a great thing, but power creep is in, I think, every TCG something, or in a lot also of other games that you have something that is similar to an older card but better. The biggest problem we have with Magic, I think, at the moment is, so to bring it on the point, in the past we had a format called Extended. Extended was like the rotation of Standard, but for a couple of years. I think it was 16 sets or something like that, or just 12 sets. I'm not sure anymore. But the cool thing of that was, hey, you have a longer period to play with the cards, but it's stuck in that 16 sets. That means you don't have the fully powered cards before that, or if there's a problematic card in it, it will rotate out. Then Wizards said, hey, we quit that. Now we have Modern. Modern was introduced and said, hey, starting from 8th edition, everything that is newer than that is now Modern legal because there's a modern frame of the cards. Old school cards looking a little bit other than like the new ones. And now we have like a situation, not officially, like Extended, because every years we get a set, or now every year. In the past it was like Modern Horizons, where you have especially modern legal cards. But this set is so powerful that a lot of the cards that you played before that are not useful anymore for the modern set. And then Wizards decided, hey, instead of doing every 2 years that set, we just stay with every 2 years with Modern Horizons, but we bring also, and this was last year's Lord of the Rings set, that's starting with Modern legally, and this set was also super powerful because the Lord of the Rings cards have like the one ring. It's like, if you remember in the past, it's a power level of a Black Luster Soldier and Boy of the Beginning. It is so powerful that you have to play it regularly over time, but you have too many cards that destroyed in modern format, and I would say especially modern format, other cards because they are not getting, hey, we banned that card. No, we bring a couple of cards that are a lot better than this card and you won't play it anymore. And now you have every two, or I think you have a shaker of format, modern and standard, every 2 sets that a couple of new decks came in that are so powerful that you won't, or you wouldn't play on a tournament all the decks.
So here's a question for both Dorian and Philip, because I know both of you have played Yu-Gi-Oh! Some time ago and some also more recently. And there is one, I want to say, impression that I've got from Yu-Gi-Oh! Without ever playing it, but from talking to or listening to people talk about the game. And I want to know how accurate you find that to be. Which is that something similar to what Patrick just described was very, very common and a very regular occurrence for Yu-Gi-Oh! Where a bunch of cards would come out, produce new strong decks. Those would get played for a while, and then immediately they would get banned, and new cards would come out. So to produce a new strongest deck, and people would have to buy those. And there's just this cycle of card releases, makes incredibly powerful decks, bannings happen, and then new cards come out to make a new powerful deck. Is that something that you've experienced at all?
I will start. I feel in the past 3 years, when I actively looked at the metagame and what gets played, it's exactly that. A new set comes out and everyone moves to a different deck if they have the budget, and that's for competitive events. The difference to Magic is not all Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are willing to spend that money. So instead of changing the deck to, let's call it Fire King Snake Eyes or Tear Elements, one of the more recent absolutely destroying decks. They keep playing and are happy to go 2-2 or 3-1, whatever, because they don't want to spend the 200 euros for a new deck. That's my impression from Yu-Gi-Oh! But there's so many people who also like their deck. Let's say they like a strategy from 10 years ago, Sky Strikers. Maybe it's not competitive anymore. They know it, but they still play it, and that wouldn't happen at Magic. That's what I see.
I would absolutely agree with what you just said. I mean, when you started talking, Dan, you just perfectly described the whole Yu-Gi-Oh metagame. It's like you couldn't have phrased it any better. It's exactly like that. You have a new set coming out. It feels like, I mean, it's not entirely like that, but it just feels like as a player that you have every month there are new cards coming out, and then okay, now this deck that was dominating all the other decks last month is now useless. And it's not even because of the ban list. Of course, the ban list is also there to just change a little bit the power levels of certain decks and certain cards. But it really feels like it comes more down to new cards getting released that are just much, much stronger. And this is also what I really, really dislike about Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is also why I don't really actively play the meta. I mean, I have a friends group of maybe, well, it depends who has time and who doesn't, from 8 to 10 people, and we regularly meet to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And we just make our own small tournaments together just for fun. We just stay at somebody's house, and then we play a whole weekend. We do only our card games. It's always a lot of fun. But the important thing for us is just what Flippy just said, is that we all have our standard decks that have been around for several years, and we just like those decks. It's a little bit like customizing or role playing what you would do in a normal video game, and we basically just try to update our old decks. Of course, every now and then somebody comes down with a new deck and says, hey, I rediscovered this archetype and that's really cool, I want to play that. But basically, we can only do that because we are in our friends group. If we would try to go to actual tournaments, we would totally get dominated by 3 to 4 decks that are just the current meta. And I know the current meta because I actively play the Yu-Gi-Oh! Online game, which has, of course, the OCG and not the TCG. Well, there's a difference between Japanese cards and English cards. But once you hit the platinum rank, you only play against maybe 2 to 3 decks, and it's all the same. And basically, when I hit platinum, I just lose until I fall back to gold, because in gold rank, it makes more fun. And I'm really not sure, because that's why I'm so interested in how it is handled in Magic with the rotating of cards and so on and so forth. And I don't even know what I would think is better, because from what you tell me about Magic, it definitely has benefits. And I think it sounds more balanced, but then I would lose the opportunity to play like my Dark Magician card, a card that came out from the start of the game. It is still relevant for fans because a lot of fans like it. But if there's no new support, I would lose that. And I don't know what I would feel about that.
I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Tried it when they introduced the speed duel format.
This crap, yeah.
It was appreciated by few and is discontinued now.
Yeah.
But the first speed duel decks started super simple, just the normal monsters. Imagine grizzly bears and hill giants in Magic. And then more and more complicated cards were added, like extra deck monsters. Yu-Gi-Oh! Tried it, but it didn't work because no one had a reason to try that format.
And also, I think about the speed duel thing, there was so the first tournament of the first series of speed duel decks. Do you have a commander-like mechanic? So firstly, speed duel was copied from the mobile game that was very successful, that came out I think 1 or 2 years earlier than the physical version of speed duel. And Speedball as a mobile game was very successful because they started with the beginning. You have a character, you're moving around, battling famous characters from the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, and they start only with the first cards from the first set. So popular cards like Dark Magician, Blue Eyes White Dragon, whatever. And then they make, hey, let's do it as a paper version. And the biggest problem with the paper version was that in the first set you have one like commander like cards. It was like field spells or like cards that depends on your character. So it was like a character card, so similar to Commander for Magic. The biggest problem is that that card affects as the game starts. And there was one card that brings the best creature, so like giant great moth, directly into play. And you have only 4,000 life points. What's automatic with 10 life points? And the Great Moth has 3,500 attack, and you can play directly turn 1 from your hand. So a friend of mine was at a YCS, it's like the Magic Fests, and that was the first Speed Duel side event, and he won that with that Weevil Underwood Giant Moth deck because it was nearly unbeatable. And the biggest problem that is like what Flippy said as well, that bring too many complex things to the game. I played also the mobile version because I love the old school Yu-Gi-Oh times. I played Code format, I still played Code format. But the biggest problem was that they changed not only the new additions of cards, what Magic is also doing in every set. We have new mechanics, we have new interactions with cards, we have new token-like cards. But the biggest problem for me is that Yu-Gi-Oh changed their rules 2 times. So the newer Yu-Gi-Oh is not, if you're starting Yu-Gi-Oh today and you played in 2004, 2003, or 2005, it's another game. It's not similar to it. So there's famous characters, but it's like you say, hey, I play Force of Will, the TCG, and the Gathering. These 2 different games. They have similar mechanics, but it's 2 different games. And I think that is a big problem for Yu-Gi-Oh today.
Yeah.
But I have one question to Dan from the beginning. As a judge, isn't it very hard that you have in every set so many new mechanics in Magic Gathering? Like, or there was a pre-release last weekend. We had in the past we have 1 set symbol, and now we have 4 set symbols in 1 set, and that makes it a lot more complicated also to introduce new players. Or would you say no? Today it's better because we have a better structure of the sets, or what do you say as a judge?
So, if you know where to look, Wizards has begun doing a decent job at explaining which sets are coming out at the same time, and where in which formats you can use which cards, which kind of cards you can find in the boosters, and so on. So that is not usually a problem. The number of mechanics is also not a big problem, I want to say, because the Magic rule system is so big and so well structured that if you understand how most old mechanics worked, most of the new mechanics work similarly. Because even though we have different formats and everything, we have one rule system that's overarching over everything, and that applies to all the formats and to all the new cards the same way as to the old cards. And so, yeah, a lot of things work similarly. What is a lot of a bigger challenge, I want to say, for judging is that with such a big output of new cards, just generally, and also one topic that we haven't really touched on yet, the different card frames that we get these days, where you can't really tell immediately if that card is a Magic card just by looking at it, because we get so many different designs for cards, like Patrick is showing right now. All of these are Magic cards.
And these are all from the last set.
But those are, those are different types of cards, right? I mean, of course.
Yeah. So to show you that I'm choosing now 2 green cards. It's from the same set. It's the same color for Magic.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is we have that regular symbol, for example, from Autos of Thunder Junction. Then we have guest artists, what they're now using to reprint powerful cards. And then we have like a themed special edition. So this is like a newspaper version where you have several cards that now look like this, also making reprints. And it's for me, a big problem about that is if you go into a pre-release, like in the last pre-release, you can play like vintage. You have cards like Mana Drain, is so powerful, it's nearly banned in every format, and it's only allowed, for example, in Commander and in Vintage. But it is a release pack, so I can open it and I can use that. On the other side, I can also play, so this card as well. This card breaks the whole game. As this card came out, it breaks the nearly every format, because the original Oko, so it was not like this frame, it was another looking card, but this is a 1-by-1 reprint. And we chatted earlier this morning, Dan and I, and we said, yeah, it feels like that you're playing vintage because you're playing an Oko and you can mana drain it. So this is something like that you can say, hey, I played Chaos Emperor Dragon and destroyed for using Sangan to play Yatagarasu. So it's totally broken that now pre-releases not balanced like in the past. I think that is a big problem for me as a fun player, because pre-release events are not competitive. It's more like sitting together, having fun. If you're winning one game, you get an extra booster pack. And it's also to making new friends and having a relaxed time. But then you have one card that breaks the whole pre-release, and I think that is a big problem for modern Magic in this case. So modern times Magic.
Yeah.
However, for the more casual side, it has some really cool advantages, because of course these different frames that we have can really emphasize the theme and the flavor of a set, and you kind of get more into the feeling of it. Like if, for example, we have some Universe Beyond things that somebody mentioned in chat earlier, crossovers with Doctor Who, with Fallout, with we have some upcoming with Final Fantasy, with Marvel. So all of these massive IPs coming into Magic, Assassin's Creed, like there are so many. But the cool thing is, especially for casual players, that they all get, at least the newer ones coming out, they all get their special frame treatments and their special way that the cards look to make it feel even more like that world. So if you're coming into Magic as a Fallout fan or as an Assassin's Creed fan, you really get more of the feeling of the world that you already know on the cards, which is pretty cool. But for me as a judge, it basically makes it impossible to look at a board state on the table and tell which cards are being played. And I remember in my first years as a judge, one of the things I was most proud of was that I basically knew all of the cards that were relevant in all of the formats, and just like with one glance at the board, I could know what was going on and what each card was. That is no longer possible. First, because I don't like physically recognize what the card is, because there are so many prints and so many different versions of all the cards. And second, because so many cards are coming out. Like the number of cards that can be relevant in a format is just so much higher than it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the actual set, there are 10 to 12 new cards that are played in several formats. So we have like a new spell that that you can do 1, 2, or 3, or you can all 3 or whatever, and these are all, for every color, several of them, and them are all useful. But I think to bring that to the point with to Philip to ask, so you also someone who just starting to hosting events, so like your old school events or just the JK events. Do you think in modern times a good thing is that we have the option to go back to that time and say, let's talk about like gold format in Yu-Gi-Oh or in Magic old school or pre-modern? So as you are a modern player of Magic and said, hey, I want to play that old school times, because you said you started after old school with Magic itself, but nowadays you can play that time of Magic the Gathering. Do you think that that is cool in the modern times that we have the option to play several formats? Because in the past in Yu-Gi-Oh, you have only one format that was relevant. And in Magic, you have like Extended, Standard, and Vintage Legacy. Nowadays, you have thousands of formats. Also, Fan made a couple of them. Do you think that people are enjoying that and coming more often to tournaments, or what do you think about that?
I think it's great to have multiple formats. Not just old school or pre-modern, which is everything before modern. Because so many players I see used to play extended. They used to play standard with Invasion, Odyssey, Onslaught cards, maybe Mirrodin cards, and now they are older, right? They don't have the time they had as a student to look at all the Magic cards, and when they don't play Magic for 2 months and they want to play Magic again, it should stay the same game. And in current Magic, that's not always the case, because suddenly there's Modern Horizons 3, which might bring some crazy surprises for Modern. Or there is Lord of the Rings with the Ring, or maybe Modern Horizons 2 with Urza Saga, Solitude, Fury, all those busted cards, and Ragavan somewhere.
Shit monkey.
And I think the reason those older or custom formats are so popular is because they stay kind of the same. If you have your old school deck from 2 years ago, you can still play it. If you have your Masks block constructed deck, you can still play it. And even for Commander, that's why it's popular, you can still play a 2 years old Commander. It's still fun to play. But if you play a 2 years old, or let's say 5 years old modern deck, Death Cloud, you will not have fun because you will get crushed. And there's still a small difference between getting crushed and keeping up somehow. And Yu-Gi-Oh!, as I mentioned before, you have those cool decks. They don't get completely crushed. Sometimes they win. In Magic, I don't have that feeling. If you play elves in Modern, you will get crushed, because the non-elf cards that are more recent are so backbreaking. So for tournaments, I think what players want is that, like, a smaller, a slower flow in what they can play. And Commander is the exception, because there, as multiplayer format, it doesn't matter.
That brings me also to the question to Kai. So Kai, you playing competitive Magic like in Legacy and Modern, but you're also enjoying, because we played a couple of weeks ago a very fun deck, but a very fun Commander round. And I think what I see you as so in Commander, you are absolutely casual, fun, bonkers player. You say, hey, I play something that is weird. I play something that makes a lot of fun. It's something that brings the table to shake up and everybody screams because this is so dumb. Let's do it. And on the other side, I know that you are very competitive in Legacy and Modern. Would you say in the past it was more problematic to go to an event to not play competitive in Magic?
Yeah, like you know, I mean, as you get older, you also tend to not take the game too seriously, maybe at times. I remember like when I was like 20, 25 years old or so, like I was really cutthroat and really about like winning games and tournaments as much as possible. And now I got a little older, and I kind of like the social aspect of the game a little more than before. And yeah, like you know, like back then, again, like, you know, when prepping for a tournament, like the morning before the actual tournament, I'll probably like wake up a couple of hours in advance, you know, like double count my deck again, watch, make a few notes maybe, and do like a lot of prep that like now I think was kind of unnecessary maybe, but it was the competitive mindset, right? And it was kind of needed, I think, back then, because the cards were not as powerful as these days, so you had a lot more games where the like you could outplay your opponent more often, I think, right? Because like let's say if you play like if all the cards legal are like mid power level cards, then the only way how you can beat your opponent is to kind of outplay them with, you know, try to be smarter or try to act like you were smarter or to do, you know, do some crazy sideboarding techniques or things that most people don't do, stuff like that. But these days, like even a beginner can just, you know, get a very powerful deck in their hands and do well in the tournament just because the cards are so powerful, right? Like sometimes you can play a little sloppier maybe and still do well. And about the commander thing, it's kind of the opposite, right? Like if you play competitively in events, then you kind of want to do the opposite, I think, in your free time with your friends. You know, like I do it like all the time, where it's just so nice to have a deck where you literally don't care what's happening on the battlefield, because the decks, the commander decks I like the most are the ones that don't play blue. Just because even if some shit happens on the table, you know, I'm like, dude, look, I'm not the blue player. I don't have any counter spells, so you guys deal with that shit. You know, it's not me. I don't know. I don't care. I think it's a lot of fun, you know, if someone goes like crazy with their combo or anything. But yeah, it's like a different like mindset, I think.
But I think that kind of brings us full circle with what we said in the beginning, when we kind of rounded up all of those formats, and to loop in Dorian on this again. Almost all of the formats that we've mentioned, standard, vintage, modern, legacy, all of those are two-player competitive formats. But now, as Flippy mentioned at the start, the vast majority of Magic players play Commander. And that is not at all designed for tournaments. That's a multiplayer social format that's just about bringing whatever cards you like, throwing them together with a theme, with one legendary creature as the boss of the deck to theme the entire deck around that creature. And casual play has just really taken off in recent years, and it also has changed Commander as a format, because and that's something that I really want to know your perspective on as a really active YouTube content creator, is how much do you think content creation, and especially in recent years, has content creation influenced how people play these games? Because for Commander, just before I became a judge like 10 years ago, was the first time I got into contact with Commander. And back then it was just like, well, you just play whatever cards you like that aren't in any of your other decks. But now that Commander has become popular, YouTubers picked that up and really made the format popular, but also made the format more solved in a way where people really analyze it and do in-depth tutorials and everything. So it's no longer just pick up a pile of cards that you enjoy.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. I think it's really comparable even to Yu-Gi-Oh! Because what you just described with all the different formats and stuff and so on, basically for me it just sounds like, yeah, meta sucks and you have fun when you're playing Commander. Basically, that's what it all alludes to, because that's what I get from what you tell me. At least that's how I process it. And that's funny because I have basically the same stance when it comes to competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! As I mentioned before. And I don't really care about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, I get a taste of it when I play the online game. But it's not like I go to a competitive tournament just because I know there will be only 3 decks there and people will come on with some paper cards that are worth a car, and they will crush me when I don't do the same. And that's just not really fun. And that's especially why me and my friends play like in this small bubble. And we also create our own formats, because sometimes we say, okay, wow, now that one deck somebody plays suddenly got new support and suddenly it's very strong again. And some of us feel it's like too strong in comparison to our own decks. And then we just say, okay, let's create our own little format. We call it 50 Cent. And no, we're not listening to hip hop music. We just saying each card cannot be priced over 50 cent. And we just put a limit on ourselves. And when we do that, sometimes those are the plays that make the most fun, because then you feel like you're back how it started, because then you are just locked out of some mid-range or even more powerful cards, and then you have to think about what you do. It's like what several of you just described before, that back in the day you would just pick up the cards you just like, and then you would go on with some tactic that is so stupid that somehow still works, and you just surprise your opponent and stuff like that. And I mean, this is so much fun. I don't know how you all got into playing Magic, and I would be really interested in hearing that. But of course, back in the day, for me, it was like everybody was watching the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, and as a child, you're like, oh, that's so cool, they have that card, and if I just have the heart of the cards and that one special card that belongs to me, then I can win. And even though it's of course it's just stupid storytelling, but it just felt different, because you knew that you had some cards, and because there weren't so much cards that were too powerful, you could actually build a deck that just does something unexpected and you could win. And today, this is no longer the case. None at all. Because as soon as there is a new display coming out, you know, there are hundreds of YouTubers that just tell you, okay, just play those 40 cards. Done. I mean, you don't even have to think about how to structure your own deck. You don't have to even think about your own strategy. And that's what I think a lot of people are missing out. And I don't really understand why you would play card games if you're just solely focusing on the meta, on the competitive part. Because of course that's fun, and maybe you can win something at a tournament and you have prestige and wow and cool. But I don't think that this is so much fun. Maybe
Yeah.
people just feel about it differently, but yeah, I don't know.
I can totally relate to this. Like I think a lot of the trading card input or newsletter style things are coming from YouTube or from streams where people basically give you tutorials. I think there's never been a time where we have got this many tutorials on literally everything in life, I think. But also including, like, I don't know, I think we all grew up with we grew up with YouTube, but we watched different stuff on YouTube, right? Like, we didn't watch YouTube to learn about new decks, like, at least I didn't. And instead, like, we had to, like, buy magazines or fucking, I don't know, like, go through online forums, you know, and threads where people talked about your Merfolk deck or your Goblins deck, for example, and then, you know, like, everyone would kind of like chime in and discuss card choices, like, you know, go like, hey, is this card playable? What do you think about this? Maybe should I play like 2 or 3 maybe? Blah 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 blah. And like the discussion goes on and on and on. And we kind of still have that thing, I think, on Discord, but I think Discord is just a little different because Discord is just a chat, right? It's not a thread where you can always scroll back to the very beginning where it explains the deck strategy and so on and so forth. But I think like the main thing is probably like YouTube and how many influencers or YouTube personalities basically tell, or especially like pro players, that they tell people, you know, look, this is the exact 75, or in Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know, the 40 or how many cards you play in your deck.
40, you basically play 40. Yeah,
perfect.
40.
Yeah, and you go like, okay, so this is it. This is the finished product. Just, you know, boom, copy paste. Let's go. Yeah. Right. And many people also ask for sideboard guides, where it's basically a guide that tells you exactly, okay, if you play against like an aggressive deck, you take out these few cards, you bring in those few. If you play against combo and control, you do this and that, and people kind of go like, you know, like. It's kind of like a navigation system on your car, you know, like you don't use the map anymore. It's just like you're all following those arrows basically. And
I'm really curious how the revival formats like old school and pre-modern fit into this? Because on the one hand, they're kind of replicating an era of tournament magic and kind of trying to replicate what was played in those formats, or what was strong. But on the other hand, at least from what I've experienced at tournaments, the social aspect and the community feeling is still a much bigger focus there than in many other tournament formats that I've experienced. So Flippy, I'm curious about your take on how those factor in here.
In Magic, in those retro formats, most players are happy. They don't go to the event to win, like most players would do for a modern championship qualifier, regional European Magic Series event. And because, let's say, of an event of 50 players playing old school, maybe 5 have the idea, I really want to win this, right? And 45 players, they want to play their Grizzly Bear and attack once. And then that's the goal. And that way more players can achieve their goal and leave the event happy. Even in Legacy, Legacy Vintage, when I think of the Eternal Weekend Prague, there was space for around 700 players, and it was sold out very quickly. And no one said, hey, why are there artists? Why is there an Ultimate Guard booth? Can't we have 100 more space for more players? No, because even for Eternal Weekend, I had the feeling a few had the goal to win this artwork and win some cool prizes, but most players went there to visit the cool artists and altarists that were present, and have a good time. And also in Yu-Gi-Oh! I saw this recently in February. There was an event in Mainz, organized by Konami itself. It had some event, but it also had fishing Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. They set up a pool, and you had a fishing rope and could fish cards. Or you could play Yu-Gi-Oh! With giant cards. Really giant cards. And this entertainment, this event instead of a tournament, that's what people like. And in the end, it doesn't really matter if it's pre-modern or old school or standard. The problem is, if you do that as a standard format, most players would expect a different environment. And I let you talk again.
I would say, I think the good thing on the modern times of trading cards is that we have access to a lot more of formats. And one thing that surprised me a lot about pre-modern is that a couple of the decks don't exist at that time because we don't have the knowledge about combos that was probably possible. We don't have the idea of, hey, how we have to beat that cards. So I remember every time that there was a magazine called Inquest, who said that Lion's Eye Diamond is the worst card ever printed. Today's it's one of the most expensive ones because there was an interaction with modern cards that you can use to make this card super powerful, like a Black Lotus. So we are nearly close to the end of this episode, but there's one topic that I want to bring, that Yu-Gi-Oh! Made a lot of things bad in the past because changing rules, bringing like Pendle. Pendle was something that destroyed a lot of players. It's like a mechanic in Yu-Gi-Oh! That is so powerful at the time, it crushed the whole game. And if you don't play Pendle, you don't win at that time. So they changed the rules one time, and then they changed the rule a second time. But what Yu-Gi-Oh! Did, instead of what Magic did, is they had also an anniversary this year, and Magic had that anniversary last year. This year we get in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or last year, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic both have an anniversary. Yu-Gi-Oh! Said, hey, we were printing the first 8 sets for a normal price, and you can rip the cards again. The only difference is that they have a small stamp on the card. It was not super expensive. There was an unlimited amount of booster box that you can buy. And maybe that surprised you, Dorian, but we have in Magic the same, but they said we were printing the second set of Magic, like better, what have reserve list cards in it. The biggest problem is there's a policy from the Wizards of the Coast that a couple of cards can't be reprinted. It's an own legal policy they made.
Wow.
They can do it on a theory, but the problem was they reprinting. So what Kai said earlier this episode, there are cards that are so powerful and on the reserve list, like a Black Lotus, like Dual Lands, and a couple more. Wizards said, we're doing proxy versions where there's another card back, but we will charge you 4 booster packs for 1,000 euros. And this was something because the most of Magic players today playing casual. I would say there was a statistic for a couple of years where WPN source get something they see that only 5% of players are going to tournaments to play actively in tournaments. And it was a very good chance to get that cards again officially printed, and not people just printing them at home and putting into a sheet. There was a chance to say, hey, here's a Black Lotus, here's Dual Lands. No, Wizards do something very wrong in this case. It crossed, the community don't accept it, they hated it, and was not successful. And on the other side, Yu-Gi-Oh! Did it very well, and they said, hey, these are officially legally played cards because Yu-Gi-Oh! Don't have a reserve list. And now, I know that in the Gold format it was similar to old school in Magic. There was a few cards like Delinquent Do that was super expensive because they never get a reprint. And now they just regular that format and said, hey, now you can play that cards. And what I want to so I think as a last topic, Dan, would you say that normally for casual players, we have to get access to all cards that existing on a short way and doing premium versions of cards for collectors, like numbered cards would we have now? Or would you say, no, that was a good choice to limit some of the cards to make it more advanced for players to rip packs open? Or what is your thinking about that?
So I think for casual play, you don't really need access to specific cards at all, because casual play is kind of just about playing with what you like most of the cards that you have, and you don't really need any specific cards, right? It's not about playing the most powerful or the most advanced version of a deck. But what I do like is making new cards still accessible and exclusive at the same time. And what I mean by that is we have some versions of cards that everyone can open in any booster pack whatsoever. And then we have other versions of the same card that literally just have a different art and maybe a different frame and a number on them occasionally, that basically just signifies, hey, this is the same card, but a very rare printing of it.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives collectors the feeling of exclusivity, of owning something special, which is a big part of collecting TCGs as a whole. And this is something that I do like. What I'm not a big fan of is something that we've seen in Magic recently, is just that exclusivity being a flood, where every card has not a regular version and an exclusive version, but there are 5, 6, 8, 12 different versions of a card in the same set, and all have varying levels of exclusivity, because at that point, no one version of the card feels really special anymore, and everything is just a slop of product. And that's kind of my big takeaway, at least for Magic, but from what I've heard also somewhat for Yu-Gi-Oh!, is that over time, the games themselves have become better products, which is kind of also what Flippy said earlier, in that they are very good at selling to the people who want that specific thing. Whatever you want out of your game, there is a product for that now. You can just go spend your money on something that caters to you. And there is no real point in collecting everything now. It's basically impossible. But what that also means on the flip side is the games themselves aren't as good as games, and you kind of have to find the fun for yourself. And that is kind of why people are moving over to more social and more casual styles of play, where they can define amongst all the vastness of products out there what is fun for us. And that's kind of where I see most people gravitating towards. But now I say that, and I know the thing that I'm personally most looking forward to is at MagicCon Amsterdam, which is Europe's biggest Magic event this year. I'm going to be judging the Magic Pro Tour for the first time, which is kind of the pinnacle of competitive play, and I would really not want to miss that. So maybe it's also like maybe all social casual fun all the time is also not good.
So because we're now after 7, but I want to give everyone a few just 1 or 2 minutes to bring back to our question. So is TCG worse, or is it getting worse over the years? So starting with Kai, what do you think? Is this trading cards, was it in the past better, or is modern TCG a good thing depending on you enjoying your TCG?
I don't think it got better or worse. I think it got more complicated, and diverse maybe. Which and diversity is not a bad thing by any means. I think, you know, like everyone has different needs. Like before we only had coffee. Now we can have coffee, tea, Coke, you know, soda, anything you want to drink, basically. Like depending on your play group. So I personally don't dislike how it's going. The only thing I would probably change is that there are just too many versions of cards, right? As Dan said, like nothing feels too special. In fact, like people wanna, like if you play a card, it's actually kind of nice if the table knows what's going on with that card. You know, if you don't have to like double check every single card because every card has so many versions. But yeah, so that's more like so I have a little bit of a critique on the design maybe. But overall, like having like more like a diversity is a really good thing.
Philip, what do you think?
I kind of agree, but I completely dislike the secret layers. Kind of because of it's so many versions, and even I in an LGS, I run 3 Magic events every week, and have Magic everywhere in my life. And I can't keep up with every secret layer that comes out every week, every other week, but I'm so long in Magic that maybe I don't like the secret layers because I want to keep my old Magic, and maybe I get old is the problem, and not the secret layers getting printed is the problem. Maybe I can imagine that. Because so many new players or commander players love secret layer. They love their cool Sauron, the necromancer in unrecognizable artwork because it's so unique. So I personally don't want to play the secret layers, but I'm happy to sell them.
Dorian, what do you think about modern, past, and Yu-Gi-Oh in this case?
I think it's just a matter of perspective. What I would definitely agree is that I know it from Yu-Gi-Oh that Konami is sometimes really breaking the bank with everything they do, and it sounds like Magic is even worse in that regard. And I think it's just getting too much cards that are somehow special because they say so, instead of just having a select few special cards that are really amazing. And they could go back on this, but apparently it works because otherwise they wouldn't do it. you know? So we as an audience buying this and we accept it somehow, and that's the way they do it. And I think just the perspective change with when you first started out playing a card game as a child or a teenager, and now that you're an adult. And even though the cards were already pricey back in the day, because I remember when I was a child, I maybe bought 10 boosters my whole childhood because they were just so expensive. But now I'm an adult and I buy displays after displays because I have the money. That doesn't mean that the price changed itself. It's just my attitude changed and my resources changed, and I have a different kind of connection to it now. And I think when people think about those card games and time has changed and stuff, I think they should really rethink sometimes whether the game changed or if they changed. Of course, they have changed, but I think this is a factor that a lot of people ignore. But to all the other stuff, I basically agree, yeah.
Ben, what do you think?
I mean, I already did my wrap up more or less, but I couldn't agree more with what's already been said. And I guess with Flippy just mentioning the secret layers for the first time after an hour of the stream, we can definitely see that there is even more to this topic to discuss than we've already said. And it's not as easily said as, yes, things have gotten worse, or no, things are actually still good or even getting better. It kind of all depends on what you want out of the game and where you shift your focus, and that goes basically back to what Dorian just said about it's a matter of perspective.
Yeah, to wrap this up, I think I love modern Magic. Also, at the moment, more interesting to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Also, I like it that in the past we only had 1, 2, or 3 card games. Now we have Lorcana, we have Force of Will, we have Flesh and Blood. We have so many more options to play TCGs. So Lorcana at the moment is a new thing. Now we have Disney, and Star Wars also is not, has now a TCG. I think with everything, sometimes we're looking back into the past and think, hey, there was a great time because we have other memories with it. Sitting together with friends, sitting at home, playing Magic, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! What Dorian said, hey, we meet together playing at home of some of our friends, a small tournament. That's something like we did in the past as well. And the experience to go into a tournament is different. And but I think the cool thing is you can if you're doing with your play group or you have a play group where you meet to play Commander, you play maybe a sealed or draft or whatever, you now have the chance to exactly look for something that you're interested in. Hey, I'm a Back in the Future fan, I love the 3rd movie. Okay, cool, here's Honor from the Junction. You have now a themed set that is similar to that. Hey, I'm a big Marvel fan. Hey, next year is your time that you can play Magic the Gathering with Marvel characters into an already played system where someone is not engaged into, it's not directly into Marvel, but you can play with them that game. You can still play the same game with someone, and it doesn't matter if you know what Marvel is or not. Or what I would say, hey, Dorian, next year Final Fantasy will be an officially set of Magic the Gathering, and I know you will look through it.
Don't tempt me.
And then there will be a secret layer with Kingdom Hearts characters, maybe. So there's also a possibility. And what I love about modern Magic is that I still can play with formats like old school or pre-modern, the era where I played Magic. And I loved Magic in the past, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! I can play Goat format if I want to play the older days. But also I have the option to say, hey, let's play modern Magic. And most people are raging, I think, over modern things is that so nearly, I would say 95 to 99% said, I hate this format or this meta, but it depends where you play. If you play in a high competitive group, then you're playing with that cards, or you have to play. Or what Flippy said as well. Hey, there's a huge amount of players. They're coming for an eternal weekend. It's 700 seats, but they're not there to. The most of them are not there to. Hey, I have to win this. It's more like, hey, coming together, meeting your friends. it's like if you meet old classmates and enjoying your hobby and discussing and trading. And I think it is every time the perspective where you look to the TCGs and how you enjoyed it. So, and the cool thing is Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and all the TCGs, they're connecting people more and more. People looking over the border said, hey, I'm a big fan of One Piece. Hey, there's a One Piece TCG. Hey, I'm a big fan of Dragon Ball. Hey, there's a Dragon Ball TCG. Hey, I want to play Magic, but I'm not so familiar with the format. Hey, let's start with Commander. It's something that everybody can play. Yeah, so my wrap up is the longest as normal, but we have one more thing because we have our raffle for today. So firstly, I want to say thank you. The chat was amazing. There was a lot of things that we also discussed in this episode. Yeah, Magic becoming plot relevant for Kingdom Hearts 4. Something. Yeah.
Well, know that they have the Locana card game, which is Disney, which is made for Kingdom Hearts. They basically announced, yeah, we're doing Final Fantasy and Magic the Gathering, and I'm like, don't you dare. Don't you ever dare.
Yeah,
because they also start with Locana.
And then we see the crossover between Locana, Pokemon, Magic, and Yu-Gi-Oh! In one card game.
Ooh, wow.
Before we end this, so Dan, you doing the raffle in this case. So thank you for the chat for a lot of feedback. It was great. It was nearly 30 people all over this hour plus time we talking about past and modern TCGs. Hopefully we will see you again. So this is not like the end of the episode, but I would say, hey, follow us, check out TCG-Home, what is also, I think, not only the sponsor, it's like, hey, TCG-Home is the company that brings us together, that we can do this format, because this is a long time idea that bring people from several places of the TCG world together. Hopefully see you all again from the stream, from the chat. Follow, bell, whatever, you know what you can do to support us. Dan, now it's your turn.
All right, so basically now that I start talking is your last chance to put the key phrase into chat if you want to participate in our giveaway. You can see it on screen, TCG Murders, type it just like that, or the bot won't recognize that you're taking part. By the time I'm finishing this will be your last chance. So get those in there if you haven't yet.
Meanwhile, so you need 1 or 2 minutes, I think. I would bring up because I think after the raffle everybody leaves.
Probably.
I would give everyone the chance to say, hey, where can I find you? So Kai, what's your next event where you're going to, and where I can find you, and what you're doing?
So I don't know exactly which event's gonna be next. There are a couple of ones. I'm not going to Amsterdam, unfortunately. Didn't get a ticket, or like I was a little too lazy, and then when I looked it up, they were already gone. And but there are a couple of events in summer this time and this year. In France, in Italy, in Spain, like it's called like Impact Returns, MTG Ones, Four Seasons Bologna. You know, like a couple of those Magic events. I will definitely be there. And otherwise, I'm also on Twitch, and I'll be streaming some Legacy tomorrow at 9 p.m. It's all Savatarix. Go check it out. We're gonna have a good time together.
Philip, where can we find you? Or what is your next tournament that you are just hosting?
Yeah, the next tournament will be the 20th anniversary event of JK Entertainment. May 30th until June 1st in Maintown near Frankfurt. All formats, Commander, Pre-Modern, Old School, Legacy, Modern, everything. That's where you can meet me in person. If you can't wait so long, you can see me streaming on Twitch sometimes, streaming Pre-Modern. Probably in 4 days at Twitch TV/derflippy123.
Dorian, where can we find you? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Where we can find you and what you're doing?
I'm never leaving my room. I'm a basement child. Yeah. No, I don't know if I'm I'm on the Dokumi in the summer. Maybe somebody can meet me in person, but I'm just casually wandering around. Apart from that, of course, I do YouTube, I do streaming, I also have my own podcast. But regarding to trading card games, I have an unboxing coming up for 2 starter decks and 2 Lorcana displays on my unboxing channel. So maybe you can look forward to this if you're interested in it.
What's your name on the YouTube?
That's of course just BaconZack. That's my normal name, my main channel. But the unboxing channel is BaconZack geiler Scheiß.
Dan, where we can find you?
Well, hopefully you can find me at the aforementioned JK Entertainment birthday event. There's still a bit of a secret about the staff list for that, so hopefully see you there. And other than that, I'm going to be at MagicCon Amsterdam in June, where I'm going to judge my first Pro Tour. So I'm of course not nervous at all, and I'm also going to celebrate my birthday there. So yeah, see me there. Say hi.
So, and to round this up, I will be also in Amsterdam. You can find me as well on several Berlin tournaments. So there is, for example, Spielfilm Musik, a store that I like a lot. Also Brettspielplatz in Berlin, where also Kai's hosting some legacy events. Was not a long time not there. And you can find me as well on YouTube, where I'm recreating my old channel, like Omega, what's named Omega Zabatsu. I created a German and an English one to talk about how to manage TCG store, for example, on Card Market. So check it out there. I think now we can go to the raffle. So everybody said, shut up, everybody. Shut up, Patrick, especially because you're talking too much. Let's go to the raffle.
All right, let's do the raffle. Everyone should have the key phrase typed in right now. And we are going to draw a winner in 3, 2, 1. The winner is Mückeschleuder. Congratulations. Please send me a DM on Twitch, so we know that you're still here, and we know that we can send you your box. Oh, I see you're already in chat. Sweet. Let's whisper.
Yeah, it's great. So it was a blast today. It was a very, very cool stream. Hopefully we'll have in the future more of this kind. So and maybe Philip and Dorian coming back as well as guests for future episodes if we have a topic where that fits for you. So especially if we're doing in 1 year the Final Fantasy episode about Final Fantasy in Magic the Gathering, I think Dorian will be a perfect fit for that. Especially if we're doing like an old school episode, so Philip would be also a great addition to that. Yeah, also check out the TCG-Home Discord. And don't forget, TCG-Home is for free. You can manage your collection there. And lastly, Dan, the last words are yours.
Well, from me as well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for our amazing guests. I really had a lot of fun talking about our experiences. And yeah, I really hope we get to do this again, and we get to discuss another time. And congratulations again to Mückeschleuder for winning our giveaway. See you around next time. Bye.